And there we go. First of all, welcome everybody. This is the Houston SCBWI, and Michelle Bryant is here to talk about humor in picture books. Take it away.
All right, okay, just make sure everyone can see my screen. Perfect, okay. There we are. So the first three picture book studies we did, we focused on one book. For this picture book study, people were asking for a study on humor, like in general. And of course, there's never one book that can cover all the different parts or jokes or types of humor. So what I've done is I've given a lot of different examples to try to cover it in as much scope as we can. So it won't maybe be as deep of a study on like one aspect of humor, but just kind of an overview and examples to get us thinking of how we can incorporate humor into our own work. Speaking of which, so the study objective, as I just said, is discussing different types of humor, including books mentioned by attendees. I'm not going to bring up every funny picture book that's ever been written. And then at the end, we'll stop the recording and then we'll brainstorm how to incorporate these elements into our own work.
Can I interrupt for a second and ask everybody, are you able to clearly hear Michelle? Because I'm having troubles. I want to make sure it's just on my end.
I can hear.
Okay, it's got to be something on my end. Maybe one of my speakers is, but I hear you so well. Okay, continue on. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
Is anyone else having trouble hearing me? I can talk a little bit louder. Okay, perfect. So what is humor? There's a lot of different definitions. I'm sure people have written books about it, but for our purposes, we can call it a literary tool that makes audience laugh, or that intends to make people feel amused or induce laughter. I've seen it described as something that's amusing, comical, incongruous, or absurd. There was a study done by Scholastic Kids and Family Reading Report that said that more than 50% of children surveyed said they look for books that make them laugh, and 47% of parents said they want their kids' books to be funny. So this is a really great topic to study because that's a large chunk of the market, and I feel like even if they did that same survey 10 years from now, the numbers would probably still be pretty similar. So I wanted to ask the attendees here, what are some of the books that kids you have known, whether they're your children, grandchildren, if you're a teacher, like what have they found funny, like their favorite funny book?
My daughter always liked the Elephant and Piggy and the Pigeon book a lot.
Was there like a particular thing that they just loved, like she laughed at, like a joke or just the whole thing?
Just their interaction and the cute pictures and stuff.
Annie, what about your kid or kids?
But you know what? I've mentioned this before for all categories. The book that always sticks with me my entire life is Paper Bag Princess. I mean, it was so rich and it was funny, just the whole and it was the concept that made it so funny.
Mm-hmm. And then anyone in chat, if y'all want to, I think Anne's going to help watch the chat for me. So if anyone has any input, feel free to just drop it in the chat box, even if you're not comfortable, turning on your camera. So what type of jokes do kids like to make when they're making jokes? So I know we've got like knock knock jokes. Sometimes kids will make like gross jokes. Margaret, did your daughters like to?
Well, she likes the Escargot series a lot too. And I love that series too, because she would read it in the funny accents and stuff.
Mm-hmm. So accents.
Accent, yeah. And plus interactive is always good when they make you, make faces or do this or that. That's always fun.
What's interesting about humor is we have to remember we're not just writing books for the kids, we're also writing books for the parents who are paying for the books. So it's important to think about what type of books adults find funny and what books are they willing to read, multiple times. Julia Donaldson, who wrote The Gruffalo, there was an article recently where she said, like, it's okay if you lose your copy of The Gruffalo behind the shelf at some point. Just recognizing that sometimes, like, kids they'll have a book that they just love, but you have to, appeal or balance that out with what the parents are able to tolerate, if not enjoy. All right, so we're going to cover some humor concepts. in kind of categories, but these are not all of them. These are just a few. So the first one, and this one can be kind of a hard sell, is gross. Gross picture books. Lots of books about, if you go on Amazon. So I didn't see as many. There are some best-selling books like Walter the Farting Dog or Harry the Dirty Dog. But surprisingly, if you go on Amazon, there's like some self-published books, and there will be a series of 32 books about farting. And many of the books will have 500 or more reviews. So there is definitely a market for gross books. It's a harder sell for getting published, but Amazon, I was very surprised. Did y'all have any y'all's kids or anybody that liked a gross book and you're like, ooh, I don't know if y'all ever had that experience. I think sometimes parents will avoid those, especially the farting ones, because you may not want to like reinforce that, but sometimes as a gag gift, those will be purchased. Another type of humor is absurd. So these are the ones that just have a really silly topic. The two at the top right are currently on the New York Times bestselling picture book list, Dragons Love Tacos and Creepy Pair of Underwear, probably because we're getting closer to Halloween. But absurd, you can take something that is a common idea, such as a dragon attack, throw a pair of underwear on it, now it's absurd, and that one's actually doing pretty well. Spoonful of Frogs is about this witch who's making soup with frogs. And you'll, as we go through some of these topics or concepts of humor, you'll see some overlaps between them. Things aren't usually always in just one category. Next is parody. Goodnight Goon is a parody of Goodnight Moon. Old MacDonald had a truck. Mary had a little lab. A lot of, I know in the 90s, the Stinky Cheese Man was pretty popular. I think that was like a parody of Gingerbread Man. And then The Night Before Halloween, there's actually a whole series of The Night Before blank, like The Night Before Easter. So these aren't as common, but this is an option. Like I saw one, like if you give a mouse an iPhone, for example. So some of the parodies will be gag gifts for adults. Not necessarily like inappropriate, but it can be a play on a children's book geared towards adults, and then they'll buy it as a haha or white elephant. Okay, incongruous. This was actually in one of the definitions I mentioned at toward the beginning of the presentation. It's basically you take a normal situation and you add like an unusual element to it. So don't let the pigeon drive the bus. Everything else pretty much is normal, but not the pigeon driving the bus. Stop That Pickles, set in the real world, but Pickles escaping, running around. Stanley the Dog is about a dog's first day at school. And then I'm pretty sure most of us here have probably read The Day the Crayons Quit. So it's like, okay, what if you let a pigeon drive a school bus? That can be a way to kind of brainstorm ideas, you know, take a normal situation. It's like, what if we change this one element? Okay, so wordplay, books that are fun to read aloud. P is for pterodactyl, the worst alphabet book ever. Terrible Plop is a rhyming book. Gruffalo, I mentioned earlier. And Llama Llama Red Pajama, that's actually one that I've read that adults seem to enjoy more than kids. So that's one the adults will like reading over and over again, but the kids may be like, eh. And then this is the only one I put that had a, I put a description under. My Pet Feet. This one is the letter R goes missing, ferret becomes feet, bread becomes bead, friend becomes fiend, crows become cows. So that's a wordplay book. And so it ends up being, the concept itself may not be as funny, but what you do with that and how you follow through with it and how the illustrations incorporate can make it hilarious. Okay, and then unexpected. So this is kind of like incongruous a little bit, but it for me is a little more clever. So got your nose, what if when someone got your nose, they really got your nose that's gone? What happens? That's unexpected. Monster Above the Bed is about a monster under the bed who's afraid of the monster above her bed, and she's scared of the child. Imposter is a skunk pretending to be a dog, and then Children Make Terrible Pets is just unexpected because you don't expect a child to be a pet to a bear. So again, they can kind of overlap, but for these, I feel like it's a little more like, ooh, the other ones I feel like are more random, but these, there's a cleverness to it. Now that was more of a concept and different categories for the book itself. I do understand it's important to talk about like in-text jokes. I wanted to talk a little bit about Ninja by R.E. Chung. Hilarious book, very, very short word count. Fantastic though. And the reason I chose this example was to show on this page, he will face danger, show courage, and find the strength to defeat angry beasts. Is the joke in the text? No. The text is setting up the situation, and the illustration is like the punchline. This is a few pages later in the book. A ninja goes unseen on his mission. I believe what makes this funny is how serious the ninja is and how seriously he's taking it, but the joke and the punchline is in the illustrations. So with in-text jokes, sometimes the author is not the one making the joke. They're setting up the punchline. That can be tricky if you're writing a manuscript. And so that's where an illustrator's note could be really important so that there's an understanding, okay, so this isn't just, okay, he's being serious doing all this. It's like, it's hyperbole almost. So one of the funniest like golden jokes for children in pictures books is the idea of like, I know something you don't know. It helps them feel a sense of superiority, and you can really build up this joke for several pages because the less the character understands, like the funnier it gets. I'm not sure how many of us read I Want My Hat, or I Want My Hat Back. Sorry, I was gonna say Have You Seen My Hat? That's a different book, but I Want My Hat Back. So the bear at this point's been asking different animals. He finally gets to the rabbit, and it's, have you seen my hat? No, why are you asking me? I haven't seen it. I haven't seen any hats anywhere. I would not steal a hat. Do not ask me any more questions. Okay, thank you anyway. How do you think a child would react to this page?
They'll say, he's got the hat.
They cannot hold it in. They're going to burst out. The hat's right there. Like, he's got it. It's there. And they will jump like out of their skin to exclaim that. And I've actually seen this before, and it's so funny. And it's one of the reasons this is probably my favorite picture book. And then what happens is there's not that resolution, and you're turning the page, and they see that the bear still hasn't realized it yet. And the bear goes to the next animal, and as the bear is asking the next animal, they're like, no, back there, he had it back there. And it's building up this momentum until the kind of, wait a minute, I have seen my hat. And then he runs past every animal after the rabbit. And this is like kind of the payoff to the joke. It's not the end of the book, but it's the Another example of this is we did a picture book study for this. Unicorns are the worst, and this is just one spread, but it's like I'd rather be neighbors with gnomes, or this dragon, or a chicken, or a. Wait a minute. So a kid will be like, "There's a dragon. There's a dragon." It's not as stretched out as the example of Have You Seen My Hat? But it's the same concept. And so it doesn't always have to be built up over a series of pages. It can sometimes be just in a single spread that you have this joke built in. But we also did a study on Grumpy Monkey, and that was part of the humor of the book, is the monkey is just denying that he is grumpy. And all these different animals are bugging him about it. And the child with the adult reading the book is like, I know something the character doesn't know, and that makes it really funny to them. Because so many times kids are being told like what to do, or being taught, and it feels nice to have that little sense of superiority over a character. And so it kind of tickles that funny bone. I did want to do a live reading. This is a book I didn't read until I was preparing for this, and I just thought it was super funny. So this is Mr. S. It's a comical first day of school book of mayhem and chaos by Monica Arnaldo. It's good if the kid or family likes Miss Nelson is missing. So it takes a very simple concept, and then it just makes it more and more and more crazy and impossible. And then at the end, it doesn't make sense, but it kind of does. And then I want us to be thinking, I'm going to ask a few questions about what categories this book might fall into, and then pay attention to some of the jokes within it. I will say, pay special attention to what's happening outside the window. The kids in room 2B could tell something was wrong. Even though it was their first day, very first time at school, they had the sense that something was missing. Where's the teacher? Someone whispered. Shouldn't they be here by now? Asked someone else. The children looked, let me minimize the video, sorry. The children looked at each other and then back toward the front of the class. Where there should have been a teacher, there was only a stack of papers, a mug of coffee, and an impressive looking sandwich. No teacher means no rules, cheered half the class. Absolutely not, scolded the other half. But before they could argue any further, a loud thwack came from the front of the room as a ruler clattered to the ground. Who did that? The kids whispered, eyeing the teacher's desk nervously. But there was only the sandwich. Clock ticked and the mug steamed, but the sandwich lay remarkably still. You don't think, said one half of the class. Don't be ridiculous, said the other. Look, called a kid from the back of the room, pointing to the chalkboard. There, written in perfectly neat handwriting, was a name, Mr. S. As one, the children murmured, Mr. Sandwich. That settled it. Everyone got straight to work. C is for club sandwich. D is for double decker. They moved swiftly through the day's lessons. Mr. S was tough, but fair. The kids all loved art class. Look over here, next page, please. Story time ran a bit long. Music class was especially unconventional. Mary had a little ham, little ham, little ham. Mary had a little ham on some nice white bread. As the day went on, some students began to wonder, is there something unusual about Mr. S? We've never had a teacher like him. We've never had a teacher at all. The children argued quietly and then not so quietly. A sandwich can't be a teacher. Why not? Yeah, there's all sorts of teachers. Piano teachers, salsa teachers, computer teachers. Slam! Suddenly the door burst open. The children in room 2B were perfectly silent as a very wet man made his way to the front of the class. Children, said the man whose jacket was smoking as though it had recently been on fire. I'm so sorry I'm late. The kids blinked at one another. I've had an unusual morning, he continued, so I'm afraid we didn't have time for a proper introduction. The wet and smoky man picked up a piece of chalk and began to write on the board. The children's eyes started back and forth between the two figures at the front of the class. I'm Mr. Spencer, your principal, and I see you've already met your teacher, Mr. S. Keep up the great work, everyone. I could tell this is going to be a special group. Looking around the room, the children had to agree. We never doubted you, Mr. Sandwich, said half the class. Well, maybe just for a minute, said the other half. Mr. S was as composed as ever. That's quite all right, children, but my name isn't Mr. Sandwich. The S stands for... What? Wait. That's the end of the book. Oh. So, is that everyone's first time reading that book or seeing that book?
That was definitely mine. And I feel ripped off. I want to know his name.
I know.
I read it before, but it actually made me kind of mad because I was like, that is so stupid. I was like, yeah, why are they, going with stupid stuff that doesn't even make sense? So whatever.
I thought it was funny.
I know it was recommended as very funny. So you're not the only one who thought it was funny. It's probably just me, but I was like, oh, come on.
Absolutely. So what categories would this fall under?
Absurd.
Absurd.
Definitely absurd.
There's a little weird play with the Mary Had a Little Ham.
Mhm.
Maybe some incongruity a little bit, and it's definitely the ending was unexpected.
Yes.
So books don't always fall like the in text. The reason I picked that one is there's kind of I don't even want to say in text, in book humor. The At the end it's unfortunate, like, but that is a bit of a joke that you don't get to know what the name was. But you can play around with that if the child is like probably 6 or 7 even. You can look, okay, well, how long are these people's names? How long is this name? About how many letters is that? Let's look up last names. You can kind of spur forth and make up the last name for Mr. S if you want to. What other were y'all able, I don't know if I was reading too fast, were y'all able to see what was happening outside the window?
Mm-hmm.
So that's another type of humor that's just purely visual. And it was Marlene, I think is her name, she also illustrated the book. And so she was able to have a secondary story. I don't know if y'all noticed there's in one of the images, he's taking cover with the pizza man and like a raccoon is like carrying off a pizza slice. I think there are also some jokes that parents might find funny or adults. Just the concept of the alphabet using sandwiches, I thought was clever. But did y'all notice any other sort of in-text jokes or other illustration things that you found humorous?
I thought maybe the teacher was in a car accident outside the window,
Mhm.
like a fender bender or something, and that's why he wasn't in the class.
His car
But
was struck by lightning,
oh,
like
okay.
a tree fell on it. There was lightning, it caught on fire. I mean, it was a lot of like escalating problems.
Yeah.
And that's where it became highly unexpected because we see this happening in the background. We're like, there's your teacher, which is what I imagine the kids are doing. And he comes in, you're like, finally, but it
It's here.
wasn't the teacher.
Exactly. There's that unexpected twist, and then you get another unexpected twist at the end when it turns out no, it was the sandwich all along, and that's when they said the hilarious, like illogical but logical ending. So that's where the presentation I'm going to end, and we can stop recording here. And then I would love to for us to discuss, those who are here, if there's any not manuscripts, we're not going to read any manuscripts, but if you'd like to throw around like any projects you've been working on, or if you wanted to go over any ideas.
I am very much inspired to find the most absurd topic ever and see if I can pull something off because yeah, I mean, you always know there's funny and you know funny's going to sell, but I didn't really think about the different ways to reach it.
Mm-hmm. Did you want to stop the recording?
Oh, are we at that point?
Yeah, I honestly like it was. I wanted to go over the different topics, and this one's going to be a little more discussion heavy, hopefully.
All right.
And then if anyone came in late, we'll have the recording so they can double back and
yeah.
catch.
All right.
Or
Well,
I can screen share if I need to and bring back up the slides again for sure.
okay. I am going to go ahead and stop the recording after saying thank you anybody who is watching. This was Houston SCBWI hosting Humor in Picture Books. I'm going to go right there. Boom. And